What's going on, everybody out there? This is Grand Prix GTP02 here once again, up here at Humble Hyundai here in North Houston, Texas. And today, for y'all's viewing pleasure and entertainment today, I am here to present for everybody out there the final ever generation of Toyota's one and only mid-engine rear-wheel drive sports car. What you guys are looking at right now is a 2003 Toyota MR2 Spyder. Now, if you have never even heard of the MR2 Spyder, let alone any of Toyota's MR series of vehicles, then I suggest you take a look back through the history books, because Toyota only ever made one official mid-engine rear-wheel drive sports car, and that of course is the car that you see here. Now, the one that you see here is also the smallest of the MR series of vehicles. It was built in 3 different generations and began life way back in the middle 1980s as the AW11. Now, the AW11, to most people, they've called it kind of the automotive origami, the standard of automotive origami, because it had so many sharp lines and corners. It really didn't have curves and sort of rounded edges like the second and third generations did. But speaking of the second generation, that is the one that you're going to see the most of nowadays when it comes to cars that have been turned into like show cars and tuners and race cars, drift machines, and everything else under the sun, because that is the legendary SW20. Now, the SW20, again, it's kind of the quintessential MR2, because everybody loves them and they are so collectible to this day. But the reason I'm getting so hyped about this particular MR2 that you see here is because not only this is the first time I've actually gotten to get really up close and personal with one. I've seen them before, but I've never really gotten the chance to get up close and personal with one. But this is also one of my particular favorite MR2 Spyders because of the fact that it's so compact. It is actually the smallest of the 3, as I mentioned before. It's even smaller than the AW11. Now, this one here goes under a couple of different namesakes. Overseas, it's known as the MRS, or MR Spyder, but here in America, we call it either the MR2, or if you're an enthusiast like me, you stick to the name MRS. So you really pick your poison on what you want to call it. Now, the reason I'm also focusing on this car is because, to me, this is kind of the forgotten MR2. This is the one that most people don't focus on, primarily for the reason that they think it may look too girly. They think it may look like something that a high schooler would be given as his or her first car, and they don't normally think of it as a true full-on sports car. But I'm here to say, having been in this car for so long, that it actually is an incredible piece of driving machinery here. And let's just take a look at the design first off, because like I said, this is the final generation of the MR2 Spyder, and it is probably one of the goofiest looking cars too, because in the front end of it, it kind of looks like a frog with the big bug-eyed headlights, you know, popping out at you. They are projector headlights in the later generations like this one here. And then of course you have this tall back end, but it does sort of stick to the original MR formula, because you see kind of styling cues from the original MR2s, like these huge grill slots right here. This is of course not only for heat extraction, so that heat can exit the engine carefully and safely, but also all 3 generations of the MR2, whether it was the AW11, the SW20, or even this MR2 Spyder, they all came with the slots right here in the middle of the hood. Now, looking at the back of it, you can see that it is somewhat of a girly shape. I mean, you have this rather large, bulbous back end. I mean, it's very much a case of, you know, short nose, kind of semi-big middle section, and then of course you have this big rounded back end. It's very much a sort of shortened down, smaller version and smaller engine version of a Porsche Boxster. Now, we all know that the Boxster is a fine handling machine, and it costs probably 2 to 3 times as much as one of these, if not a little bit more, depending on condition. Now, I mean, the Boxster is a great car to compare it to, and having driven this thing, I can actually say that this thing drives as good, if not better than, a Porsche Boxster. And again, looking at the front of this thing, you almost see a little Porsche Boxster in this thing with the style of the headlights. I mean, if you cut off maybe about this much of the headlight, you brought it all the way down and then edged it in a little bit forward, what would you see? To me, I would see a Porsche Boxster in that. Now, like I said, again, these headlights are just huge. They stick out of the front of the car. Look at this. Look at the front of those headlights. I mean, you've got these raised front portions here along the hood, and actually this is not the hood. I mean, it's at the front end of the vehicle, but it's actually not the hood. That's at the back of the car, because of course the engine sits right about where those vents are on the side of the car. So of course this is a true off-the-wall almost collector's item, because again, they stopped producing these things after about 2005 to 2006. Now, just a few quick specifications before we actually get into this car and start taking a look at the interior and start her up and everything else. This one here is finished in a beautiful deep metallic black and is paired with a black and red leather upholstered interior. And this one here is actually extremely low mileage as well. It's very well taken care of, despite all of the rock chips and nicks and other things like that that you might find on a car that is now 12 years old, believe it or not. It's hard to believe, 12 years old and it still looks this good. This car here has done just over, and I mean just over 55,000 miles, so still very, very good condition and very low miles for its age. One other thing is that this is the MR2 base. There really were no options that you could throw at this thing other than maybe things like leather seats, the 6-speed sequential shift automated manual transmission that this car has, and a few other options like that. But really, this was as the car came. I mean, it really looked exactly like it does here across the line. All you could change was maybe the wheels and the color and the interior. That's really about it. And speaking of the wheels, we of course have these beautiful silver and machine finished aluminum alloys. These are the standard 5-spoke wheels for the MR2 Spyder. These are mounted on trying to find the tire size here. These are 195 50R 15-inch wheels here in the front, and I guarantee you the tires are probably a little bit thicker out here at the back. If we look at the tire size here, yep, these are 225 45 ZR 16s, so 16-inch wheels in the back, 15-inch in the front. So of course that means that the back end is going to be raised up a little bit, thinner tire in the back, so the stance and the level of the car kind of remains the same, but again it sits a little bit higher due to the fact it has bigger wheels in the back of the vehicle. Now, as far as security systems and things like that, you could get this car with keyless entry. This one of course doesn't have it. It just has your standard Toyota key. Now the end of it is cut a little bit different than a standard Toyota key. If you were to look at one, say from a Corolla or a Camry or something like that of the same generation, you would notice that the end doesn't have that huge divot right there at the very beginning of the key. The key blade on this is a lot thicker, and that is specific to the MR Spyder. Now, of course, we'll unlock it the manual way, of course. And also one final thing, this convertible top that you see here is also manually folding, and we'll show you how that works here in just a little bit, give you a little bit of an idea of how this car looks with the roof down. Now, as I said, this car is paired with a black and red leather upholstered interior, but it's kind of a mix match of colors as far as going from the doors to the interior of the vehicle itself. You can see here on the outside, you've got these beautiful gray cloth door panels here, and also this painted silver piece here for this giant grip. Now, it is typical Toyota quality of 2003. You find a lot of plastics and stuff. No real soft touch materials or anything like that to speak of, other than the softness of the door panel here itself. You also have the power door locks, as I mentioned. You've got those right here to the left of the steering column. As you can see, you also have the instrumentation dimming fog lights, window locks, power mirrors, and also your power windows are located way down there right next to the emergency brake. But as far as the rest of the interior itself, I mean, that red is just so vivid, and most people say that a red interior on a car or even a red accented interior can make or break a sports car. But for this one, I think Toyota really did a nice job on this one, and even if this is aftermarket, that just looks incredibly awesome. And you can see it's also very well taken care of. Really, the only thing that's got any flaws in it at all is the Toyota badge right here in the middle of this steering wheel. It's got a few chips in it as well. But as far as powered options go, you really, again, are not going to find very much in this vehicle. You, of course, have your hood release, which would be the back of the vehicle, gas cap release, and you can also lock that. But you also have manually adjustable seats. You have your manual recline down here via the lever. You have your manual, I think that's lumbar. And then, of course, you have your manual adjustment down there underneath the front of the seat. Now, if you are looking for a car that is, I mean, any kind of spacious at all, you might want to look elsewhere, because of course, stepping into this thing, you really have to duck your head, and you also really have to make sure that the seat is all the way back, especially if you're a person that's as tall as I am. I'm about 6 foot, 6'1", and as you can see, my knees are just about in the back of the steering wheel here. So, I mean, it is a tiny little car. Now, as far as directly looking right here in front of the driver, everything here is very, very simple. I mean, it kind of looks like a little bit of a parts bin car, like Toyota took some of the parts from their other vehicles and bolted them into this car. For example, the steering wheel looks like it's taken directly out of, say, a same generation Corolla, or maybe even a Celica, and then equipped with what can only be described as the weirdest set of paddle shifters, and I put quotation marks around that because there's two buttons on the back of each spoke of the steering wheel, and if you use your middle fingers, or whatever finger you prefer, that will shift the vehicle up. Then of course where your thumbs would rest, if you don't use the grip extensions, you have the buttons to shift them down. Very much a similar system if you saw a review I did a while back of a Saturn Aura, and I know that's nothing to compare this car to, but it had those dumb paddles on the top of the steering wheel where if you push it forward, it would shift up. If you pull it back, if you push it forward, it would shift down. If you push it back, it would shift up, or vice versa, however it worked. But it's very much the same system where you've got both controls on both sides of the steering wheel, so it can get extremely confusing. But it is leather trimmed. You of course have the perforations here at 9 and 3 o'clock. You've got the red stitching to accent the black. Then of course you've got this wonderful red leather surrounding parts of the steering wheel, your shifter knob, and then of course these wonderful seats. And as far as the seats go, the seats almost have this kind of carbon fiber like look to them. You can see here on the leather. I think this may actually be aftermarket. If this is factory, this looks amazing because the seating materials are super soft. The leather is just so plush to sit on here. Even the outside bolsters of the seats are just incredible. As far as the bolstering themselves, I'm relatively skinny. I'm only about 170 pounds at 6'1", and I mean, you kind of wiggle around a little bit. You're not exactly hugged in place. These aren't Recaro seats, but they are bolstered chairs. So maybe even somebody wider than me, maybe 200 plus pounds, could fit in this car. You just would have to worry about legroom, and you'll see why here in just a bit. Now, one of the odd things about this car, and we'll get to the rest of it here in just a minute, is the transmission in this particular car. You can get this car with one of two transmissions with only one available engine. We'll go over the engine specs here in just a bit, but this transmission that we have here is Toyota's 6-speed sequential shift automated manual transmission. Basically, you have neutral like you see here. Now, if you keep your foot on the brake, you can flick it over and up, and that goes into reverse, and there's a small chime that goes off, and I'll show you all of the motions that you would go through to select particular gears. But then of course you can pull it straight down and over, and that of course engages the forward gears. Now, the way this works is you can't just leave it in the S and expect it to drive like a normal automatic. You have to drive this car like a manual transmission. You just aren't going through the typical H pattern. You put it over here, you pull it back to go down a gear, hence the plus, or up a gear, hence the plus, and also push forward to go down a gear. So very much like a race car. Because race car, as a lot of the young folk out there like to say. Now, as far as the center stack goes here, if you have a little bit of storage up here at the top, you could of course fit like some maps. It is relatively deep. I'm actually kind of straining to get my hand all the way at the back of it. I can just barely touch it, but it is quite deep, so you could fit like maps, maybe some phones, something like that up there. Maybe even some snacks if you even dare take this car on a long road trip. I've already driven this thing, and I can tell you it produces a heck of a lot of noise with the engine being right there behind your head, and not only that, but the tire roar in this thing can be quite deafening as well, considering the convertible top here is so thin. As far as the air conditioning goes, you really don't have much space in the vehicle to move some air around, so of course it's a single zone system. You have your climate temperature over here on the far right, you have your fan speed right here in the middle, then of course you have your climate zones over here on the left. You of course have your face and your feet and defrost, and then of course you have drawing the air in from outside, but you also have the defroster. Then of course up top here you have a digital clock, you have air conditioning recycling right here, which is this. Then of course down below you also have a standard Toyota radio. You have just the standard power here, all of your preset radio stations, your tune button, does have a CD player in it. It even also has a tape player in it. Welcome back to the early 2000s, everybody. And then also you have the standard seat track buttons, AM and FM radio, tape, and also CD, as I mentioned before. You can also press the text button and see what is actually playing on the radio. But overall, I mean, like I said, it's very basic in this car, and the only other option that I can see, aside from the intermittently timed wipers up here on the right-hand stalk, is of course the cruise control, and it's pretty typical Toyota. You pull it down to set, push it up to reset, pull it forward to cancel, hit the button here to turn it on and off, and that's really how it all works together. Just a quick look over here at the controls on the left-hand side of the steering wheel. Like I said, not too difficult. Then, of course, you also have tilt steering. I don't believe it telescopes. Nope, it does not. I kind of figured that. This is 2003, of course. Then, of course, it's all controlled by the nice little lever down here below. But being that this is a Toyota, it is supposed to act like a Toyota. So that, of course, means it's supposed to sound nice and smooth. It's supposed to purr like a kitten, and it's supposed to run reliably for hundreds of thousands of miles. Now, being that this one only has 55,000 miles on it, let's go ahead and see if this little baby acts like a Toyota normally should. So the key is over here. As you can see, also one difference is that the ignition barrel on this thing, like I said, this key is a lot thinner than a standard Toyota key. The ignition slot just for the little key, for the key blade itself, would be a lot larger as far as width, but it would probably be a lot smaller. So again, this key is specific to the MRS, but again, you stick it in the ignition, you get that typical Toyota chime going on. And as you can see, the white face gauges here, definitely a signature MR deal. And as you can see, this car has done 55,086 miles here. But to start the vehicle, if you watch me just try to turn the key, as you can see, nothing happens, okay? Because this is an automated manual transmission, what you have to do is actually put your foot on the brake, make sure the car is in neutral, of course, then turn the key, and now what you're hearing behind your head is Toyota's 1ZZ FE, and it's a variant of that, but it is the 1ZZ 1.8 liter twin cam 16 valve 4-cylinder, and we'll go over a little bit more specifications about that here in just a bit. But it is a pretty revvy little engine for a little four-banger. And it actually doesn't produce half bad of a sound. I mean, it actually is a really nice sounding motor. And of course, I'm sorry it's so dark up in here, but again, as you can see, standard white face gauges for the MR2. You of course have your fuel gauge over here, all of your warning lights, engine temperature, rev counter here in the middle, as I mentioned. Then of course you have the display for your gears, and I'll show you that here in just a bit. Then of course you have your speedometer and odometer over here on the left. Now to go over the transmission, because like I said, it is a little bit of an odd one. Now, because this is an automated manual, you of course have to keep the e-brake set. So of course we have neutral here. Now if you put it over and up, you'll get a small little chime in the interior letting you know it's in reverse. So just push it over, then up. As you can see, that puts it in reverse. Then to go into forward gears, you just push it over like that. And of course it's beeping at us because we haven't close the door, as you can see. Inside the cabin though, one quick note is it is actually pretty quiet. You may notice some rattles and squeaks throughout the interior because again, these cars are, some are over 10 years old, so of course, being Toyota plastics and everything like that, you're going to expect that in some cases. But if you watch, I'll pull the gear stick down just a bit, and that engages second gear, push it up, and now it goes back to first. Now I'm gonna just drive it forward just a little bit, and I wanna show you, there is a bit of hesitation in this car once you actually set off. So my foot's off the brake, and you can hear it hesitates a little bit before it actually starts moving. And the same can be said for reverse. So again, a little bit of hesitation, but if you don't like the 6-speed transmission in this, you can also get this car with a good old-fashioned 5-speed manual transmission with overdrive. Now, one thing I was not aware of is this little gauge up here. I don't know exactly what this is. I think this is fitted aftermarket. It's something from Fusion. According to from what I'm seeing on the screws, this was not a part of the car, so don't worry about that little gauge up there in the middle. As far as the radio goes, this one's been outfitted with some updated Pioneer speakers. I don't know if those were options or not, but as far as the sound system goes, it's actually not too bad. Let's see if I can find a good radio station here. Well, it would seem there's a bit of static in the radio, but anyways, you kind of get the idea. It was working a good bit ago. But anyways, you have small little cup holders down here. Don't even know why they're there because they're really not useful. Then, of course, you have your little ashtray way down there in the center. And it's really all obscured because there's this giant shifter knob in the way, which can get to be a little bit of a pain in the butt. But anyways, now that we're looking at everything else, I mean, there really is not much to say as far as storage goes, because of course you got these big plastic panels back here. You got one single cup holder up here and a slot that's maybe the size of a modern day smartphone. As far as the windows go, it does have an automatic down driver's side window at the very least. And like I said, this is where you will find your power window switches. You of course have your passenger side and then the driver's side as well. And yes, it is only an automatic down. But now that we've had a good look around the interior and everything, let's go ahead and get under the skin of the engine. That of course pops the rear of the vehicle, and to pop the front, which we'll get to here in just a bit, we'll go ahead and pop that too, which is located in the glove box. But for starters, let's go ahead and look at the engine. Now tucked away in the back of this tiny little convertible's engine bay is Toyota's 1.8 liter 1ZZ twin cam 16 valve inline 4-cylinder engine with of course their dual variable valve timing with intelligence. This is basically the same motor that's in the Toyota Corolla S. It's in a few other of Toyota and Scion's cars from back around this generation. The numbers are pretty decent. It's 138 horsepower and 125 pound-feet of torque, and although that may not seem like much, being the fact that this is such a lightweight car, it is definitely a wonderful power to weight ratio. The fuel numbers from an engine like this are actually extremely good, and the lightweight nature of this car also does have something to do with it. You're looking at 26 in the city and 32 on the highway, which is excellent numbers for a car like this. If you really tickled it, you could even get over 35, so that would be a definite bonus. But as you can see, the engine bay in here, pretty cramped, pretty compact. If you wanted to work on this thing, you might be able to if you move those crossbars out of the way, but other than that, maintenance means that you might actually have to drop the engine on this car, which can be a bit of a pain in the butt, but I mean, it's a convertible. What do you expect? So now that we've had kind of a look in the engine bay, we've looked at the interior, we've walked around the exterior a good bit, let's go ahead, put the roof back, give you a little bit of a view of what the car looks like with the roof down. Then of course, we'll go ahead around the rest of the vehicle. So, let's of course get back in. Now again, being that this is a manual folding convertible top, you of course only have 2 levers. You just push the tab, and that automatically flips it out. I'll show you again. You can just see, push on the tab here, that folds out, just like that. Put your head visors down, then just push it up. As quick as that. It comes really in handy, especially when doing it in the rain. Now of course it locks into place right here, as you can see, and this latch right here, right underneath this small little black plastic wind guard, if you pull it, you can see that the convertible top then releases and allows you to put it back in place. But we'll go ahead and leave it down for the rest of the review today. Give you a nice little view of what it looks like with the roof down. Again, as you can see, it's a very, very tiny car. And of course we pop the front, that's why that's that little gap there. I'm not sure if many of you were wondering about that. There's what it looks like with the windows up. 9 times out of 10 you'll keep the windows down when you're really wanting to enjoy some open top motoring. And I'm sure many of you were wondering, and I know this is kind of an obvious one, but also these vents here in the side of the car, these are not for show. These are actually functional. These are the air intakes to lead back to that 1.8 liter 1ZZ inline 4-cylinder engine at the back. Very, very cute little car though. I absolutely adore these things. Now also, I think somebody may have debadged the back of this thing, because normally there would be a little bitty badge right back here, and maybe it was just earlier generations that had this, but it would say MR2 Spyder or MRS Spyder right there on the back of the sort of rear bumper, the rear fascia of the vehicle. Just looks incredible. So let's see about storage space here at the front of the vehicle. Now I've never actually tried to get under here, so this may take me a second, but it seems I found it right off the bat. If you look underneath, You of course have a little bit of storage, and I was wrong about what MR stands for. That of course stands for midship runabout. So I would assume this is Toyota's kind of fun little driving sports car. You look underneath, there's some space for your spare tire and also a hazards kit. So really, there's not too much user space like for suitcases and stuff when it comes to actually running this vehicle. So not good marks for storage, but nevertheless, what are you gonna wanna store in a car like this? Let's go ahead and turn on the headlights and fog lights too, and we'll show you how those work. The headlights are on, there's your fogs. Give you a quick look at those. As you can see, these are standard halogen projector headlights. You could not get HIDs on this car, no matter how hard you try, unless you did it aftermarket. Beautiful, beautiful little car. Again, it looks like a miniature, much more affordable Porsche Boxster. Such a shame Toyota had to discontinue these cars because I absolutely adore them. Turn those off. And now really the only other place we have to go is through the passenger door. Now again, like all of my other videos before, I am not the salesperson here at Humble Hyundai. I simply like to do all the videos of the cars and stuff like that. But if you are interested in this particular MR2 Spyder, I've included the link via Humble Hyundai's website in the description box below. And of course, then you can also stop by our location, to which I've also provided the address to our location in the description box as well. Overall though, this is extremely fun to finally be getting a chance to get behind the wheel of an MR Spyder. I mean, these are so hard to find nowadays. Sitting in the passenger side, I mean, I'm leaning back, and of course I'm gonna get some real wind in the hair with the top down, but I mean, it just is such a sweet little car to be in. And then of course you have your glove box. You can turn the passenger airbag off with the key right here. This of course is the release for the front of the vehicle, as you just saw. And also, as you can see here, we do have the nice old school Toyota owner's manual for this thing, along with both keys, as you can see. Or if you can't see, it's kind of shaded over there. Anyways, as far as passenger space goes, I mean, again, I'm kind of cramped up. My knees are up in the air a little bit. I feel that if I was in an accident, albeit the airbag's way up here, and you have two of them, because you have one for the driver, one for the passenger, and I do not believe, nope, it does not come with side airbags of any kind. So really, you've only got two airbags, one in the, two of them in the front. Really, I mean, my knees would probably end up somewhere in the glove box. It is rather small. But overall, I mean, this is a great way to get yourself a nice little open top convertible without having to go through the hassle of paying all kinds of big financial means and everything like that. And also, one final thing, you see right here, the warning about the SMT. So it's for sequential manual transmission. The SMT is an electronically controlled manual transmission and different than an automatic. Follow the tips positioned below. So that of course means leave it in neutral, put your emergency brake on. It basically tells you in English and Spanish how to actually operate the 6-speed SMT or sequential manual transmission. Overall, guys, I'm really happy to finally be bringing you one of these. It's been such a long time since I've actually seen one of these cars, and actually a first for me for actually getting inside one. So definitely a wonderful, wonderful treat. So everybody, this now concludes our full-on walkthrough of this 2003 Toyota MR2 Spyder. Again, this has been an extremely awesome privilege, and a big thank you to Humble Hyundai for providing this car for me today and allowing me to actually bring you guys yet another awesome example of their inventory here. Again, if you want to figure out more information about this car, I've put the ad and the address and phone number to Humble Hyundai in the description box down below. Again, guys, this has been Grand Prix GTP02 up here at Humble Hyundai, and I will see you guys again next time. Take care, everybody, and have a good one.